In a quiet village wrapped beneath the cold breath of winter, every morning began in much the same way. Smoke curled gently from stone chimneys. Footsteps marked the fresh snow, and as the first golden light touched the rooftops, the warmest place in the village opened its doors. It was Thomas's bakery. Every morning, the smell of freshly baked bread drifted through the narrow streets. Families gathered outside. Children laughed as they carried warm loaves home, and for a little while, even the coldest winter morning felt warm. But across the street stood a boy named Oliver. He was only 12 years old. His coat was worn, his gloves were torn, and there were days when his stomach remained empty from sunrise until nightfall. That morning was one of those days. Oliver watched the children eating their bread. He looked at his empty hands, then toward the bakery window. He could smell the warm loaves from where he stood. For a long moment, he did nothing. Then, slowly, he crossed the street. Inside, Thomas was busy serving his customers. The shelves were filled with bread, and the bakery echoed with conversation and laughter. Oliver stopped near the counter. One fresh loaf lay within reach. He looked at it, then at Thomas, then back at the bread. His hand moved forward and stopped. He knew what he was about to do was wrong. But a moment later, Oliver grabbed the loaf and ran. "Stop him!" The cry echoed through the street. Oliver ran as fast as his tired legs could carry him, clutching the bread tightly against his chest. Villagers rushed after him. More people joined the chase as he crossed the snowy square. But Oliver wasn't fast enough. His foot slipped on the icy road, and within moments, the villagers surrounded him. There was nowhere left to run. The loaf was still held tightly in his hands. The village elder stepped forward. "Why did you steal it?" Oliver lowered his head. He said nothing. The villagers demanded an answer. Still, Oliver remained silent. To them, his silence was proof enough. A thief had been caught with stolen bread. What more was there to understand? The elder raised his staff and spoke of punishment. But Thomas had been watching the boy carefully. Something troubled him. Oliver looked frightened, certainly. But he wasn't holding the bread like a hungry child desperate to eat. He was protecting it. Thomas stepped forward. "Wait." The crowd became quiet. Thomas looked at Oliver and asked only one thing. "Where were you taking it?" Oliver still didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the road beyond the village and began to walk. Thomas followed. Then the elder. And soon, the same villagers who had chased Oliver through the streets were following silently behind him. They passed the last houses and entered the forest. The path grew narrower. The snow grew deeper. Still, Oliver continued. No one knew where he was taking them. Then, through the trees, they saw it. An old abandoned church. Its stone walls were cracked. Its doors were weathered, and winter had nearly swallowed the forgotten building. Oliver stopped before the entrance. He pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The villagers followed cautiously. The church appeared empty. Oliver walked toward an old stone altar and gently placed the stolen loaf upon it. Confused whispers moved through the crowd. Had they followed him all this way for nothing? Then a voice came from the shadows. "You're late today." Everyone froze. An elderly man slowly stepped into the light, guiding himself with an old wooden walking stick. His name was Brother Gabriel. He was blind. His clothes were patched, his body frail, but when he heard Oliver's footsteps, his face filled with a gentle smile. And for the first time that morning, Oliver smiled too. "I'm sorry," the boy said quietly. Brother Gabriel reached for the loaf. The villagers watched. Perhaps now they understood. Oliver had stolen the bread to feed this old man. But the story wasn't finished. Brother Gabriel carefully broke the loaf into 3 pieces. He kept one, he placed another into Oliver's hands. Then he carried the final piece toward the church doorway and placed it outside in the snow. Everyone watched in silence. A few moments later, a thin golden-brown dog appeared from between the trees. It approached cautiously and began to eat. The old blind man, who had almost nothing, had still saved a piece for someone who had even less. Thomas looked at Oliver. The anger had disappeared from his face. In its place was something much heavier. Regret. He slowly knelt before the boy. "Oliver," he asked, "why didn't you simply ask me for bread?" For several seconds, Oliver said nothing. Then he looked toward Brother Gabriel, and finally he answered, "I could bear being hungry." His voice trembled, but I couldn't bear watching him beg. No one moved. Oliver had not remained silent because he was ashamed of stealing. He had remained silent because he did not want the village to know that Brother Gabriel depended on him. He was willing to be called a thief, rather than turn another man's poverty into a spectacle. The villagers who had shouted the loudest now lowered their eyes. The elder slowly lowered his staff. That morning, they had seen a poor boy and decided they already knew his story. They had seen him run and called him guilty. They had seen his silence and called it shame. But none of them had stopped long enough to ask what his heart was trying to protect. One villager quietly left the church, then returned carrying bread. Another brought a blanket. Others brought firewood, food, warm clothes, and medicine. Before long, the cold, forgotten church was filled with something it had not known for years: warmth. Brother Gabriel sat quietly, overwhelmed by the kindness surrounding him, and beside him, the little stray dog rested peacefully. Thomas placed a hand on Oliver's shoulder. "You'll never have to steal bread again," he said. The following morning, Oliver entered Thomas's bakery, not as a thief, not as a beggar, but as an apprentice. Thomas taught him how to knead the dough, how to tend the fire, and how to know when a loaf was perfectly baked. Oliver learned quickly. For the first time in a long while, he had a warm place to sleep, food to eat, and something even more precious: a future. Months passed. Winter surrendered to spring. The abandoned church was repaired. Brother Gabriel grew stronger, and the faithful dog remained at his side. And Oliver? The village no longer remembered him as the boy who stole bread. They knew him as the boy who delivered it. Every morning he walked through the streets carrying baskets of warm loaves, greeting the same villagers who had once chased him through the snow. Then, one morning, Oliver noticed a little girl standing outside the bakery. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Oliver recognized the way she looked through the window. He remembered that hunger. He remembered those empty hands. Without asking a question, Oliver picked up a warm loaf and walked outside. He knelt before the girl and placed the bread into her hands. She looked at him in surprise. Oliver simply smiled. From the bakery doorway, Thomas watched proudly. And somewhere nearby, Brother Gabriel smiled too. Because kindness has a strange way of traveling. One person gives it to another. That person carries it forward. And sometimes a single act can change more than one life. The villagers had once believed they were chasing a thief. Instead, they had followed a boy whose kindness led them toward a truth they had forgotten. A loaf of bread can satisfy hunger for a day, but compassion can change the way we see another person forever. So, before you judge someone's actions, before you decide that you already know their story, remember Oliver. Sometimes, behind the choice we understand the least. Is a heart protecting something we never thought to see?